You're on a wooden bench outside courtroom 4B, and your wrists still hurt in the shape of something that isn't there anymore. It's 9:40 in the morning. You've been awake since 3. Somewhere behind you a vending machine hums, and a woman with a toddler on her hip keeps checking a paper with a number on it, and a deputy walks past like you're furniture. Not hostile, just furniture. A man in a decent suit comes down the hall fast, carrying a stack of manila folders that keeps trying to escape him. He stops in front of you and says your last name, and he says it wrong. Says the first syllable like it rhymes with something it doesn't rhyme with. You don't correct him. He asks if you did it. You start to answer, the real answer, the one with the part about the parking lot and what actually happened, and he's already looking at the folder, already flipping. He's got 11 more names before lunch and 13 after. He says the offer is 11 months. He says if you take it today, you're probably out in 7. He says if you fight it, it's a trial date in 4 months, and you're sitting in county until then, because bail is $500 and you don't have $500. 7 months guilty, 4 months innocent, then a coin flip. You look up at the clock above the bench. It's the kind with a plastic face that's gone yellow, hanging slightly crooked, and it has probably watched 100,000 people do this exact math. The math isn't about whether you did it. Nobody in this hallway has asked that question in a way that expects an answer. This is the justice system at $0. The same building, the same statutes, the same seal above the door. The system doesn't change from here up. It only reveals what it always was, one level at a time. Let's climb. Level 1. $0. Here's what nobody tells you about being broke inside the law. You are not treated as guilty. That would require someone to have an opinion about you. You are treated as a scheduling unit. Your lawyer is real. He passed the same bar exam as the man who defends billionaires. He is also carrying somewhere around 140 open felony files, and there are roughly 2,000 working hours in his year. Do that division. You own about 11 hours of his life, total, from arrest to sentence, and most of those hours will be spent in a hallway, standing up next to a vending machine. That's the whole mechanism, right there, in one number. Not guilt. Hours. How many hours of skilled human attention stand between you and the machine? 11 hours cannot investigate. 11 hours cannot find the gas station camera that points at the parking lot. 11 hours cannot interview the 2 people who saw it. 11 hours can read the police report, walk to the bench, say your name wrong, and relay an offer. Then there's the $500. Bail isn't punishment. Everyone will tell you that. Bail is a deposit to make sure you come back. And it works exactly as designed on people who have $500. And it does something else entirely to people who don't. You sit. You sit for 4 months waiting for a trial date. And while you sit, the shift manager replaces you, and the landlord files, and your mother's car gets towed because the payment was in your name. Nobody decided that. That's the part that takes a while to accept. There's no villain in the hallway. The deputy isn't cruel. The prosecutor isn't cruel. The man with the folders isn't cruel. It's just that indifference at scale looks exactly like cruelty from underneath, so you plead. Not because you're guilty, because guilty is 7 months, and innocent is a coin flip you have to buy a ticket for, and you can't afford the ticket. You look up at the yellow clock, 9:51. The whole thing took 11 minutes. At $0, you don't lose the case. You never get one. You're not being judged. You're being processed. Level 2, $2,500. Something shifts, and it isn't in the courtroom. It's in a storefront 2 blocks away with a neon sign and bulletproof glass and a guy who is very, very nice to you. He's nice to you because you're a customer. That's new. Nobody in this system has been nice to you yet. Bail is $500, and now you can pay it. But here's how it actually works at this level. You don't pay the court. You walk into the storefront and hand a bondsman 10%, and he posts the rest, and the 10% is gone. Forever. $50 on a $500 bond. $500 on a $5,000 bond. It's not a deposit. It's a fee. You are renting your own body back by the month, and there is no version of this where you get that money returned, even if you're acquitted, especially if you're acquitted. That's just the bond closing out clean. So you go home. And going home changes the case more than any evidence ever will. Because now you show up to court in your own clothes instead of a jumpsuit. Now you keep the job, which means the letter from your employer exists, which means the judge sees a man with employment instead of a man in custody. Same man, same facts. The 4 months you're not sitting in a cell are 4 months the offer softens, because the prosecutor's calendar is crowded too, and a defendant who isn't costing the county $60 a day is a defendant they're happy to let drift. You still sit on the bench. 6 hours, this time, because your case is set for the 2 o'clock call, and the 2 o'clock call means everyone at 2 o'clock. The clock is still crooked. You watch the whole day happen to other people. The same system that couldn't spare 11 hours for you at $0 just moved your entire outcome for $50 in a neon sign. That's the tell. That's the first crack in the seal above the door. The price wasn't justice. The price was $50. At $2,500, you're not free. You're released. Different word, on purpose. Level 3, $15,000. You hire a lawyer, your own. It costs $5,000 up front, which is a third of everything you have, and you sign the retainer in a small office with a printer that jams. He's not a genius. He's a guy, but you just bought something the man with the manila folders could never sell you at any price. You bought hours, maybe 40 of them. And the first thing 40 hours does is nothing dramatic at all. He files for a continuance. That's it. One piece of paper. The case moves out 6 weeks. Understand what just happened, because this is the hinge the whole ladder turns on. At $0, time was a weapon pointed at you. Every day was a day in a cell, so speed was mercy and delay was torture. Now time flips and points the other way. 6 weeks is a witness who moves and stops answering calls. 6 weeks is a prosecutor who catches 3 new cases and starts looking at yours as a thing to clear instead of a thing to win. 6 weeks is a diversion program that opens up in the new fiscal quarter. Money doesn't buy innocence at this level. It buys the calendar. And the calendar wins more cases than evidence does. The bench, now, is 40 minutes. Your lawyer texts you the courtroom number the night before. He says your name correctly because he read it before he met you, and it's such a small thing that you almost don't notice it, and then you notice it for the rest of your life. The same system that offered you 11 months when you had nothing just offered your lawyer a deferred dismissal. Same file, same facts, same alleged parking lot. Nothing about the crime changed, only who was standing next to you when they read it. At $15,000, you're not innocent. You're represented. That's the first thing anyone here has ever mistaken for the same word. Level 4, $100,000. The shift here is that someone finally checks. $25,000 buys a real defense attorney, and a real defense attorney's first move is to spend your money on someone who isn't a lawyer, an investigator, retired cop, drives a gray sedan, charges $85 an hour, and he goes to the parking lot. He pulls the gas station footage before the 30-day override. He knocks on doors. He finds the 2 people who saw it, and he gets them on paper, dated, signed. That footage existed at level 1. It existed the whole time. It sat on a hard drive 400 feet from the courthouse and quietly deleted itself while a man with 140 files told you 7 months was a good deal. That's the part that should keep you up. The evidence that clears you doesn't care how much money you have. It just sits there with a timer running, and the timer is the only judge that matters, and you can pay to stop it. Now there are motions, a suppression hearing. Your attorney has read the arresting officer's last 4 cases and knows how he testifies. The prosecutor pulls the file, sees the name on the other side, and does the math every prosecutor does. This one costs me a week. The bench? You don't wait on it. You wait in a conference room with a window, and your attorney walks in and says they're offering a misdemeanor. The same system that told you innocence was a 4-month coin flip just discovered a video that answers the question in 9 seconds. At $100,000, you're not favored. You're expensive to convict. Those are 2 completely different sentences that produce the same verdict, and only one of them is written down anywhere in the law. Level 5, $750,000. You stop hiring a lawyer and start hiring a firm. There's a difference, and you feel it in the room. 3 people work your file. One does nothing but motions. One does nothing but the science. And the science is where the money goes now. An expert witness, $400 an hour, 20 years at a federal lab, a curriculum vitae so long the state's own analyst gets quiet reading it. Here's what that buys. The forensic evidence was never certainty. It was always a range, an error rate, a lab with a backlog and a technician doing 11 of these a day. At every level below this, that range gets read to a jury as fact, because nobody in the room is being paid to say otherwise. Your expert is being paid to say otherwise. Same evidence. Now it has a margin of error, and margin of error is the legal name for reasonable doubt. You're not buying a different truth. You're buying the second opinion the truth always deserved and almost nobody gets. The clock above the bench is still crooked. You know, because your paralegal walked past it this morning, holding your file, while you were at work. The same system that gave you 11 hours of a stranger's year now has 3 professionals reading your case at once and a fourth on retainer to argue about a number. At $750,000, you don't answer the charges. Your charges answer to somebody. Level 6, $5 million. Now the fight moves backward in time. At this level, you have a lawyer before you have a problem. Not on retainer for a case, on retainer for a life. And the moment there's a whisper of an investigation, a subpoena to a bank, an agent knocking on a business partner's door, you get a phone call, and the call ends with, "Don't talk to anyone. We're handling it." Then they do the thing that costs the money. Your attorneys request a meeting with the prosecutor before charges are filed, and they walk in with a binder. Your version of events, your documents, your context, your character letters, assembled by people who bill $900 an hour. Think about what that is. That's a defense presented to the only person whose opinion matters, at the only moment it's cheap to change, before a jury or a headline or an arrest ever exists. At level 1, you met your defense in a hallway after they took your shoelaces. You never see the bench. There's no arrest, so there's no booking, so there's no bench. The case ends in a room with water glasses on the table. The same system that couldn't find 9 seconds of video for you now sits down for 2 hours with your people to hear you out before it decides you're a defendant at all. At $5 million, you're not fighting the charge. You're negotiating whether the charge gets borne. Level 7, $40 million. The lawyer you hire used to be the prosecutor's boss. That's not a scandal. It's a career path. People run the office, then they leave and go make 8 times the money defending the people the office looks at, and the ones who stayed behind still call them by their first name. Nobody is corrupt. Everyone is just a person with a phone and a memory. So the room changes. Your defense isn't a filing anymore. It's a conversation between 2 people who have been to the same 3 weddings, and the tone of that conversation is, what does this need to look like so we can all be done with it? Numbers appear that never appeared below. A payment described as restitution. A monitor. A period of years where you don't do the thing, and at the end of the years, the file closes. Nobody says the word guilty out loud, because saying it costs everyone something, and there's no reason left to spend. Your name is said right the first time, by everyone, before you enter the room. The same system that took 11 minutes to decide your life at $0 will take 14 months to carefully decide it at $40 million, and it will call that thoroughness. At $40 million, you don't hire a defense. You hire the memory of the people who'd have to prosecute you. Level 8, $500 million. You're not a person here. You're an entity. And entities have a defense the rest of the ladder can't buy at any price. They cannot be handcuffed because there's no wrist. The harm is real. It's larger than every case in this video stacked together. Thousands of people, real money, real ruin. And the resolution is a document called a Deferred Prosecution Agreement. The company admits a set of facts. It pays a number with a lot of zeros that turns out to be a fraction of what the conduct earned. It agrees to hire a compliance monitor. It agrees to be better. And no human being is charged. Not one. Because charging a human requires proving which human, and the whole architecture, the layers, the counsel, the deniability, the way the decisions got made in rooms designed not to remember, is engineered so that answer doesn't exist. That architecture cost $40 million in legal fees a year, for years, in advance. That was the product. That's what it was for. The fine goes in the annual report, on a line, under a heading, and the stock moves less than 1%. The same system that put a man in county for 4 months over a parking lot because he didn't have $500 just settled a 9-figure fraud with a press release and a promise. At $500 million, you don't beat the charge. You are structurally unavailable for one. Now go back. Wooden bench, courtroom 4B, 9:40 in the morning. The vending machine hums. The woman with the toddler checks her paper. The man in the decent suit comes down the hall too fast with the folders trying to escape him, and he says your last name wrong, and he asks if you did it, and he isn't listening because he has 11 more before lunch. The bench is still there. It was there at every level. At $2,500, you sat on it for 6 hours. At $15,000, 40 minutes. At $100,000, it became a conference room with a window. At $5 million, it stopped existing. It never went anywhere. You just stopped being the one sitting on it. And here's what didn't change. Not once. Not at any rung. The statutes are identical. The standard of proof is identical. Beyond a reasonable doubt, all the way up and all the way down. The seal above the door is the same seal. The words carved into the front of the building don't have an asterisk. Every promise this system makes was fully in effect for the man on the bench at 3 in the morning with sore wrists. The law never bent for anybody in this video. Only the hours did. Because a right you can't afford to exercise isn't a right. It's a price. And every single thing you climbed past, the investigator, the video, the expert, the continuance, the meeting before the charge, was always available to you at level 1. It was sitting right there the whole time. It just had a number on it. Same person. Same parking lot. Same law. The justice system didn't treat you differently at each level. It treated you exactly the same at each level. It sold you exactly what you could pay for. You were never innocent or guilty in that hallway. You were solvent, or you weren't.